Let's try to recreate Blade Runner 2049's cinematic look. I started with a reference image of the scene and brought it into F-Spy. If you don't know about F-Spy, you can watch my full video here showing you how to download it, install it, and activate it in Blender. After marking your X and Y axis, export the F-Spy file and import it into Blender. That gives us a camera with a perfectly matched perspective in Blender. Go to Add, Mesh and Plane to add your ground plane. Scale it up to fit your scene. Now make loop cuts and extend the edges where the ground extends in the reference image. I selected the corner edges and extruded them outwards to make the walls. Then I selected the faces and pressed Alt-E to extrude along normal to give thickness to the walls. Now I added two human figures from Blender Kit for scale and reference. Then it was time to start modeling the rest of the details with simple primitives, like a cylinder for a pillar and simple cubes for beams and buildings. Then I used a simple cube and two cylinders to make a fluorescent tube light that was there in the reference image. Add an emissive material to the cylinders and a metallic material to the base. Then I used some Bezier curves to model the pipes in the image. Give the pipes some thickness by increasing the bevel depth in the geometry panel of the curve. I used some simple cylinders to make the 90-degree angled pipes above the main pipes. Duplicated and arranged them according to the reference image. Then I added some loop cuts and extruded some faces to better define the silhouette of the background building. I used a simple plane, extruded it in edit mode to make this gutter/drainage in the left corner, and used simple cylinders to make the supports for it. I placed some cubes in the background and extruded them to form the electrical boxes. The wires and conduits leading out from it were modeled from simple cylinders. And this is what we had so far. Now I began adding the remaining background details from the reference image, using simple cubes to extrude out shapes and cylinders to make the pipes in the background. Make a cylinder and duplicate them inside edit mode and arrange them to make the stands for the neon letters. I brought in a crane model from Blender Kit and positioned it in the scene. I was not sure what exactly this text was, so I was not going to model it. Instead, I chose a cool font from thefont.com and just typed Blade Runner. Added some extrusion to the text using the geometry panel and positioned it in the scene along my stands that I modeled. The final thing left for modeling was this exhaust/chimney type structure, which I went ahead and modeled with a simple cube and a cylinder. I like to make grates in this way. I choose a face, add a lot of loop cuts onto it, choose the alternate loop cuts, Ctrl B and bevel it out, and Alt E to extrude it. Now most of the modeling in the scene was done. I used the background buildings from this amazing creator called Scene Filler. Definitely check out his channel where he shows you how to create amazing stuff, and also his Gumroad page, which is in the description, to download these free assets. The best part about these buildings are that they have a light texture, and by changing the alpha you can make them all emissive at night, so you don't need different materials for the buildings at night. I placed these background buildings in my scene, loosely referencing the image from the movie. The reference image has snow on the ground, so I found a way of making quick and easy snow. Go to Add and add a meta ball into your scene. The best part about these meta balls are when you duplicate them and move them very close to each other, they start meshing with each other. So you can use a lot of meta balls to make some weird snow deposits on the ground. You can adjust the size of the meta balls, move them around and make different clumps and sizes of snow. You can also change the resolution of the meta balls to make it more smooth. And then select all meta balls, F3, and convert to mesh to make it a single object. It still doesn't quite look like snow, so I added a displace modifier and a clouds texture with a very low strength to give it a more uneven surface resembling snow. You might be wondering why there's Ryan Gosling in the background. Well, there was this emission texture in the original reference which I didn't have, so I used his face. And now my favorite part, add a cube and scale it up to cover your scene. You know what I'm going to say next. Add a principal volume node and connect it to the volume of your material. Adjust the density as you wish and increase the anisotropy from 0 to make the light scatter more towards the camera. You can also increase the strength of the lights and the emission materials to scatter more into your scene. Let's also add this red spotlight in the background. Add a spotlight and increase the strength to something like 20,000. And also make sure to go into your light paths menu and increase the volume bounces from 0 to something like 2 to 4 minimum to scatter more light in your scene. Now let's add the materials. I made a wet concrete texture by plugging in a noise texture into the base color and also the bump node at a high scale of about 1000. Add another noise texture, plug it in into the color ramp and connect it to the roughness input. Keep the scale of this new noise texture low to create patches of wet ground. I added the rest of the materials just using Blender Kit because it has thousands of free materials, HDRIs, models for you to use in your scenes. I also chose the faces of the Blade Runner and gave them some emissive materials and gave the back a metallic texture. I love the glow the emission materials create on the scene. I want to talk about this amazing free resource called Blender Rain Generator. It's a GeoNode setup which has rain, splashes and everything inside it. You can just append this to your project, scale up the rain box to cover your scene, adjust the scale of the rain, the tilt, etc. You can also increase the amount of the rain. No sci-fi scene is complete without a bunch of cables hanging around. So use this amazing Geo Cables add-on by Amandeep. You can see my full video up here about using Geo Cables. For compositing, I just added a glare node with a fog low and a lens distortion with a low distortion and dispersion and a brightness and contrast node. So that's the final scene, guys. Sorry there's no animation today. There was some stuff glitching in my computer, so I had to reformat it. And I'm just finishing this video minutes before uploading. Anyway, follow my steps and make your moody sci-fi renders. And I'll hit you guys with an animation of this scene soon this coming week. I've got a lot of amazing stuff coming out and going to announce my short films soon as well. So stay tuned and subscribe for more tutorials.